It begins in moments that feel too ordinary to question, like responding to a message while your attention is elsewhere and realizing only afterward what you agreed to, or saying yes in a conversation because the words arrive faster than reflection. And in each of these situations, the experience feels smooth and continuous, as if awareness were present and steering the process the entire time. Yet if you pause and ask yourself when the decision actually happened, the answer is surprisingly difficult to locate. Because what feels like a conscious choice often appears only after the brain has already settled on a direction, unfolding quietly beneath awareness. And this silence is not emptiness, but coordination. Because before intention ever enters the picture, the brain is already working to reduce uncertainty and prepare action. Beginning with perception rather than deliberation, as sensory systems continuously filter the environment, reducing an overwhelming stream of information into something manageable by prioritizing what seems relevant based on context and familiarity, while the thalamus quietly routes these signals, amplifying some inputs and muting others so efficiently that by the time anything reaches awareness, it already feels structured and meaningful. And this early filtering explains why familiar environments feel effortless, why routines unfold without friction, and why certain cues immediately stand out while others disappear unnoticed. And as this filtered information moves forward, it encounters memory, with the hippocampus supplying context drawn from past experience, silently answering questions you never consciously ask, such as whether this situation resembles something you have handled before, whether a familiar response is likely to work again, or whether the moment carries any real uncertainty. Or why one option feels obviously right while another feels invisible, even when they appear nearly identical. And at this stage, nothing feels like a decision yet. Because they are objectively superior, but because they require less effort to initiate. And this bias toward efficiency is subtle, presenting itself not as habit, but as preference, which is why repeating familiar behaviors rarely feels automatic. It feels intentional, and as this bias builds, predictive processes begin smoothing what comes next, with the cerebellum continuously anticipating likely movements, timing, speech, and adjusting actions before they reach awareness, making behavior feel fluid and reactions feel immediate. And this predictive smoothing creates a powerful illusion of control, because when nothing interrupts the flow, it feels as though awareness is actively directing events in real time, even though the direction is distributed across systems operating beneath consciousness. And by the time you become aware that you are about to act, whether that action is sending the message agreeing to a request, or reaching for an object, motor preparation has already begun holding multiple possibilities. Ready, so behavior does not pause while you think, because the brain prioritizes continuity over reflection. And this is the moment many people assume awareness takes command. But in reality, this is when the prefrontal cortex enters as an interpreter rather than an initiator, organizing what is already happening into a coherent explanation. And when you finally slow down enough to reflect, the range of possibilities has already narrowed dramatically, leaving only a few options that feel reasonable, which makes the outcome appear obvious in hindsight. And this leads to a quietly unsettling realization that the sense of control does not always guide decisions. It often follows them, arriving once uncertainty has already been resolved, mistaking completion for command. And this pattern repeats throughout the day in moments so ordinary they rarely draw attention, shaping how quickly you respond, what feels familiar, and which paths seem available, setting the stage for a deeper layer that has not yet been explored. One where these silent choices begin to shape not just behavior, but identity itself. As soon as you begin to notice that many decisions are already in motion before awareness arrives, the experience of everyday life starts to feel subtly different, because moments that once seemed simple begin to raise quiet questions, like why you feel confident about a choice you never consciously examined, or why certain reactions feel so aligned with who you think you are, even though they emerged automatically. And this shift happens because the brain does not stop working once a decision is made. it immediately begins a second process that is just as important, making sense of what just happened. And this is where identity quietly enters the picture, because after action occurs, the brain's focus moves from preparation to interpretation, as the prefrontal cortex starts organizing the outcome into a narrative that feels coherent and personal, linking the choice to reasons that fit your existing self. So that responding quickly becomes evidence of being efficient, agreeing easily becomes proof of being cooperative, and choosing familiar options becomes part of seeing yourself as practical or consistent. And this narrative construction happens automatically, without deliberate reasoning, which is why explanations often appear instantly when someone asks why you did something, even if you never consciously compared alternatives. And this stability is reinforced by memory systems that bind actions to outcomes. Revealing that what feels like control is less a single point of command and more a dynamic alignment between perception, memory, prediction, bodily signals, and narrative, all working together to maintain coherence. And this realization quietly reframes everyday experience, because if awareness consistently arrives after the most important work has already been done, then many aspects of modern life may be shaped by similar silent processes, operating just beneath the surface, waiting to be noticed. When you carry this awareness forward into the texture of modern life, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore, because the same silent structure that shapes individual decisions also governs how attention moves, how motivation rises and falls, and how certainty settles in long before it feels deliberate. And this becomes especially visible in environments designed for speed and continuity, where choices are embedded in flows rather than presented as clear moments of deliberation. Like scrolling through information that never fully pauses, responding to prompts that arrive already framed, or navigating routines that reward familiarity over reflection. And in these contexts, the brain relies even more heavily on prediction and learned patterns to maintain efficiency. As sensory systems rapidly assess what feels relevant, memory supplies familiar interpretations, and behavioral systems prepare responses that require minimal effort, creating an experience where action feels seamless and awareness feels present, even though it often arrives after momentum is already established. And this is why attention can drift without intention and snap back instantly when something familiar appears, or why motivation seems to vanish or surge without a clear cause. Because beneath awareness, large-scale networks are continuously adjusting priorities based on context, expectation, and internal state, shaping what feels engaging or draining before you consciously evaluate it. And this shaping is reinforced by neurotransmitter dynamics that signal salience and reward, subtly influencing which actions feel worth pursuing and which feel easy to abandon, without ever announcing themselves as chemical signals. And over time, these silent adjustments begin to feel like stable traits, as if you are naturally interested in certain things, naturally indifferent to others, naturally decisive in some situations and hesitant in others, even though these tendencies are constantly being recalibrated beneath the surface. And this is where identity becomes less a fixed center and more a moving pattern, maintained through repetition and explanation rather than conscious control, because once an action occurs, awareness steps in to explain it, linking it to intention, values, or preference, reinforcing the sense that you are the author of what just happened. And this authorship feels real because it preserves continuity, allowing the mind to move smoothly from one moment to the next without fragmenting experience. And yet recognizing this process introduces a subtle shift, because it reveals that what feels like control is often a form of alignment, where perception, memory, prediction, bodily signals, and narrative converge just in time to create coherence, not because awareness directed every step, but because it arrived in time to make sense of the outcome. And this realization does not diminish agency, but it reframes it, suggesting that agency is distributed across time rather than located in a single instant, with preparation happening early, action unfolding fluidly, and understanding arriving last. And when this perspective settles in, it becomes easier to notice how similar patterns operate across trust, confidence, and belief, shaping not only what you choose, but how certain you feel about those choices afterward, especially in environments that reward speed and familiarity. And this is where the story opens rather than closes. Because once you begin to see how much of experience is guided quietly before awareness arrives, it becomes clear that the same mechanisms are at work in many other areas of the mind, influencing how you interpret events, how you relate to others, and how you experience the passage of time itself, inviting continued attention rather than final conclusions. As if the most important processes shaping everyday life are not hidden because they are inaccessible, but because they operate so smoothly that they rarely demand notice.